The last words my wife said to my 82-year-old mother were words I would never forget. Figure it out yourself. My mother was standing in our kitchen, one hand gripping the edge of the counter and the other trembling around her walker. She had called my wife because she couldn't get her medication bottle open. That was all. She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't asking for a ride. She wasn't asking my wife to become her nurse. She simply needed someone to help her open a bottle that her arthritic hands could no longer manage. My wife, Karen, looked at her for several seconds. Then she sighed. I have my own problems. My mother lowered her eyes. I understand. Karen turned toward the sink. You're 82, Eleanor. You need to start figuring these things out yourself. My mother didn't argue. She simply nodded. Then she slowly walked toward the guest room. I watched her disappear down the hallway. Something inside me broke. But I didn't know yet that by the following afternoon, my entire family would be sitting in a lawyer's office, and my wife would be the one begging me to stop what was coming. Welcome back to Father's Hidden Reckoning, where sometimes the people closest to us reveal who they really are when they think nobody is watching. My name is Daniel Brooks. I was 64 years old when I learned that marriage doesn't always end because someone stops loving you. Sometimes it ends because you finally discover who they became. For 38 years, my wife Karen and I had been married. We had raised 2 children. Our daughter Melissa was 36. Our son Jason was 33. We had survived layoffs, medical bills, arguments, mortgage payments, Christmases where we had more people than presents, and birthdays where we had more cake than money. It wasn't a perfect marriage, but I thought it was a loyal one. Karen had always been organized, careful with money, extremely concerned about appearances. She liked a clean house, a nice neighborhood, good clothes, and most importantly, she liked people to believe that our family was doing well. My mother, Eleanor, had never cared about any of that. She lived alone in the same small house where my father had raised me. She was 82. Her knees were bad. Her hands were worse. But her mind was still sharp. She remembered everyone's birthday, every family argument, every embarrassing thing I had done as a teenager, and she had one habit that drove Karen crazy. She refused to ask for help unless she absolutely needed it. That was why the incident with the medication bothered me so much. Because my mother had actually asked, and Karen had refused. I should explain how we reached that moment. It started 6 months earlier. My father had died 12 years before. After his death, my mother continued living alone. For years, she managed everything herself. She cooked. She cleaned. She paid her bills. She even shoveled snow from the front steps. But age eventually catches up with everyone. First came the knee problems. Then her eyesight began getting worse. Then arthritis made simple tasks difficult. I started visiting her 3 or 4 times a week. I fixed things around the house, picked up groceries, checked her medications, and every Sunday I took her to lunch. Karen didn't like it. At first, she never said anything directly. She would simply ask questions. How long are you going to stay? Did your mother really need you today? Couldn't she call someone else? I ignored it. Then the questions became accusations. You spend more time at your mother's house than you do with your own wife. That one hurt. Because I wasn't choosing my mother over Karen. I was taking care of an 82-year-old woman who had spent her entire life taking care of everyone else. I told Karen that. She didn't answer. Instead, she walked away. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. A month later, my mother fell in her kitchen. She didn't break anything. Thank God. But she couldn't get back up. She lay on the floor for nearly an hour before she managed to reach the emergency button she wore around her neck. When I arrived at the hospital, she was sitting in a wheelchair. She smiled when she saw me. Don't look so worried. You fell. I've done worse. You could have broken your hip. I didn't. Mom. She squeezed my hand. I'll be more careful. I promised her I would find someone to help around the house. That's when Karen said something I should have paid more attention to. Maybe it's time she sold the house. I looked at her. Why? Because she can't live alone. I know. So sell it. My mother had lived there for 57 years. Selling that house wasn't a simple decision. But Karen had already made up her mind. If she moves into assisted living, you won't have to keep running over there. I stared at her. You make it sound like she's an inconvenience. Karen rolled her eyes. I'm just being practical. Practical? That word became one of the most painful words in our marriage. Because every time Karen wanted something, she called it practical. When she wanted my mother to sell her house, it was practical. When she wanted control of my mother's finances, it was practical. When she wanted me to stop visiting my mother, it was practical. And when she eventually tried to take everything my mother had, she called that practical too. The first warning came 3 weeks before the medication incident. My mother called me late one evening. Daniel? Her voice sounded nervous. What's wrong? Nothing. Mom. She sighed. I found some papers. What kind of papers? I don't know. Where? In my desk. I drove over. She was sitting at the dining table with a folder in front of her. What are these? She pushed the papers toward me. They were photocopies of property documents. Her house. Her bank account. A power of attorney form. And a document I didn't recognize. I looked at her. Where did you get these? They were in my filing cabinet. Did you sign them? She shook her head. No. I read the power of attorney carefully. The document appeared to give someone authority over my mother's financial affairs. But the signature at the bottom looked like hers. Almost. There was something wrong with it. My mother saw my expression. What? This doesn't look right. I knew it. You knew what? I don't remember signing it. I took a photograph of every page. Then I asked her if anyone had been inside the house recently. She thought for a moment. Karen came last Tuesday. My stomach tightened. Why? She said she was helping me organize my papers. I didn't say anything. My mother looked at me. Daniel? Yes? Do you trust your wife? The question hit me harder than anything else could have. Of course. My mother nodded. I hope you're right. I took the papers home. I didn't confront Karen. Not yet. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she had downloaded the forms for some legitimate reason. Maybe my mother had forgotten signing something. Maybe I was imagining things. Then came the morning of the medication bottle. It was a Tuesday. Rain had been falling since dawn. My mother had stayed with us because the heating system in her house had stopped working. I was supposed to take her to the pharmacy that afternoon, but I had an emergency at work. So she asked Karen for help. I was in the hallway when I heard the conversation. Karen? What? Could you open this for me? What is it? My arthritis medication. Karen took the bottle. She looked at it, then handed it back. You should have asked Daniel. He's busy. Then wait until he's free. I just need help opening it. Karen sighed. Eleanor, I have enough things to worry about. My mother looked embarrassed. I didn't mean to bother you. Karen turned toward her. Then don't. There was silence. Then came those words. Figure it out yourself. I stepped into the kitchen. Karen? She looked at me. What? You could have helped her. I have things to do. She can't open the bottle. Then you open it. I walked over and took the bottle from my mother. I opened it. My mother whispered, Thank you. Karen walked out. I looked at my mother. She was staring at the floor. Mom, it's okay. No, it isn't. She shook her head. Don't fight with your wife because of me. That sentence stayed with me. Because she wasn't asking me to defend her. She was asking me to protect my marriage, even after my wife had humiliated her. That night, after my mother went to bed, Karen and I argued. You embarrassed her. Karen crossed her arms. She embarrassed herself. How? By expecting everyone to take care of her. She is 82. And? And she's my mother. Karen stared at me. I knew this would happen. What? You're choosing her. No. Yes, you are. You refuse to help her open a bottle. She needs more than that. What does that mean? Karen didn't answer. Instead, she walked upstairs. I stayed in the kitchen. For the first time in 38 years, I wondered whether I really knew my wife. The following morning, something happened that changed everything. At 7:14 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mother's doctor. Mr. Brooks? Yes. This is Dr. Patel. Is something wrong? Your mother is here. My heart stopped. What happened? She was brought in by ambulance. Why? She collapsed. I was already grabbing my keys. Is she conscious? Yes. Is she hurt? Not seriously. I drove to the hospital. My mother was lying in a bed. She looked small. Smaller than I had ever seen her. Mom. She smiled weakly. I told you I was okay. You collapsed. I felt dizzy. The doctor entered. We ran some tests. And? She appears to have had a significant drop in blood pressure. Why? The doctor hesitated. Her medication levels are unusually low. I looked at my mother. What does that mean? She hasn't been taking her medication properly. My mother looked confused. I have. The doctor frowned. Your prescription should have been refilled 5 days ago. I thought Daniel picked it up. I shook my head. I didn't. My mother looked at me. Then who did? That was the first question. The second came 10 minutes later. A nurse handed me my mother's medication bottle. The label had been replaced. The prescription was correct, but the pills inside were not. I stared at the bottle. What are these? The nurse checked. They're harmless. Then why was she taking them? We don't know. I called the pharmacy. The pharmacist checked the records. Mr. Brooks, your mother's prescription was picked up 3 days ago. By whom? He paused. Karen Brooks. I couldn't breathe. My wife had picked up my mother's medication, but the pills weren't the right ones. I called Karen. She answered immediately. Where are you? At home. Did you pick up Mom's medication? Silence. Yes. Why? She asked me to. No, she didn't. What are you talking about? Those aren't her pills. Another silence. Then Karen said, I don't know what you're talking about. I hung up. I called the pharmacist again. He confirmed the prescription had been dispensed correctly. Someone had switched the pills afterward. I returned to my mother's room. She was sleeping. And for the first time, a terrible thought entered my mind. Maybe the medication incident wasn't an accident. Maybe Karen hadn't simply refused to help my mother. Maybe she had been trying to make my mother sick. I didn't accuse her. I didn't call the police. I did something much smarter. I called an attorney. His name was Thomas Reed. He had represented my father years earlier. I told him everything. The power of attorney. The medication. The altered pills. Karen's behavior. He listened without interrupting. Then he asked one question. Who controls your mother's money? My mother. Who has access to her accounts? I do. Anyone else? I hesitated. Karen. How? I don't know. Find out. That afternoon, I checked my mother's bank statements. There were 6 withdrawals over the previous 2 months. Small amounts. $700, $200, $900, $1,500. Nothing large enough to immediately attract attention. But they totaled nearly $7,000. Every withdrawal had been made from an account my mother rarely touched. I called the bank. The withdrawals were made using a debit card. A card my mother said she had never used. I asked for the transaction locations. 3 were near our house. 2 were near Karen's office. 1 was at a jewelry store. I looked at the date. It was the same day Karen had claimed she was helping my mother organize paperwork. I called Thomas. We need to meet. He said, now. That evening, I met him at his office. I brought every document I had. He spread them across the table. Then he found something. A signature. Daniel? What? Look at this. He pointed to the power of attorney. Your mother's signature was witnessed by 2 people. Who? Thomas read the names. Karen Brooks. And another name? Michael Grant. I knew Michael. He was Karen's brother. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. Thomas looked at me. Why? Because Michael lives 3 states away. Thomas turned the page. The document was notarized locally. I stared at him. Then someone forged the signatures. That's what it looks like. I sat back. My wife. Her brother. My mother's money. a forged power of attorney, and now altered medication. This was no longer a family disagreement. It was a crime. But there was something I still didn't understand. Why? My mother owned one valuable asset. Her house. It was worth approximately $640,000. If someone could gain control over her finances and property, they could eventually force a sale. I told Thomas. He nodded. That's probably the motive. But why would Karen do this? That's something you need to find out. I went home. Karen was sitting at the kitchen table. She looked up. How's your mother? I stared at her. She'll recover. Good. I sat across from her. Did you pick up her medication? Yes. Did you give it to her? No. Why not? She shrugged. She wasn't taking it correctly. That answer made no sense. How would you know? Because she told me. I said nothing. Karen looked irritated. Why are you interrogating me? I'm not. You are. I just want to understand. Understand what? I looked directly at her. Why did you tell my mother to figure it out herself? Karen's face hardened. Because she needs to learn that the world doesn't revolve around her. I stood. She's 82. So? I walked away. That night, I didn't sleep. At 2:13 a.m., I heard footsteps downstairs. I got out of bed. The hallway was dark. I walked toward the staircase. Someone was standing near my mother's room. It was Karen. She was holding a folder. She didn't see me. She entered the guest room. I waited. Then I followed. The room was empty. The folder was gone. I checked my mother's suitcase. Nothing. Then I noticed something on the desk. A small envelope. I opened it. Inside was a photocopy of my mother's deed. Across the top, someone had written, "Transfer before October." I photographed it. Then I heard Karen behind me. What are you doing? I turned. She was standing in the doorway. What is this? She looked at the paper. I don't know. It's your handwriting. No, it isn't. It is. She stepped closer. You're becoming paranoid. Where were you just now? In bed. No. She froze. I saw you. For the first time, Karen looked afraid. Then she said something I'll never forget. You don't know what you're protecting. I stared at her. What does that mean? She walked away. The next morning, I took my mother to Thomas's office. She brought her old financial records. Thomas examined them. Then he found another problem. My mother's house had recently been appraised. Without her permission. The appraisal company had been hired by a real estate holding company. The company was called Brookstone Property Group. I had never heard of it. Thomas searched the registration. The owner was listed as Michael Grant, Karen's brother. I felt sick. My mother looked at me. Daniel, I'll fix this. She shook her head. No. What? You need to protect yourself too. I held her hand. Mom, I can handle this. She smiled. You've always said that. Then she reached into her purse. I have something. She pulled out a small notebook. This belonged to your father. I opened it. Most of the pages contained old financial notes. But one page had been marked. A name, Michael Grant. And beneath it, never trust him with property. I looked at my mother. When did Dad write this? I don't know. Why didn't you show me? Because I didn't think it mattered. It mattered. A lot. Thomas copied the page. Then he asked my mother a question. Mrs. Brooks, did your husband ever mention Karen's brother? She nodded. Once. What did he say? He said Michael had money problems. How bad? Bad enough that he might do something stupid. I looked at Thomas. He didn't say anything. That afternoon, we opened a formal investigation. We hired a forensic accountant. We requested bank records. We checked property filings. And then we discovered the real plan. Michael wasn't simply trying to steal my mother's house. He had already created a company using an address connected to my mother. The company had borrowed money, almost $180,000. And my mother's property was listed as collateral, except she had never signed the loan. Someone had forged her name. My wife and her brother weren't planning to sell the house. They were planning to use it as security for a business loan. If the business failed, my mother would lose her home. And if anyone investigated the documents, it would appear that she had approved everything. I felt something inside me go cold. But Thomas wasn't finished. He showed me another document, a life insurance application. My mother's name. I stared at it. Why would they need life insurance? Thomas looked at me. They wouldn't. Then why is this here? Because someone may have created it for another purpose. I read the beneficiary section. My name wasn't there. Karen's name was... I couldn't speak. My wife had taken out a policy connected to my mother. Without telling me, the amount was $750,000. Thomas closed the folder. We need law enforcement. I nodded. But before we could contact them, my phone rang. It was Karen. Where are you? At the office. With who? That doesn't matter. It does to me. Why? Because I know what you're doing. I froze. What am I doing? You're digging into things you don't understand. Then explain them. Silence. Karen? She said quietly, you're going to destroy this family. I answered, you're the one who did that. She hung up. That evening, I went to my mother's house. She was sitting in her living room. I told her everything. She cried. Not because of the money. Not because of the house. She cried because she had loved Karen. She was like a daughter to me. I know. You trusted her. I know. She looked at me. Why would she do this? I didn't have an answer. Then my mother remembered something. Daniel. What? Karen came here last month. What happened? She asked me to sign something. What? She said it was for your retirement. What did you do? I refused. Why? Because your father taught me never to sign anything I haven't read. I smiled sadly. That sounds like Dad. She nodded. Then her expression changed. She got angry. How angry? She said if I didn't cooperate, she would make sure I ended up in a nursing home. My fist tightened. She threatened you? She said she was only trying to help. That was enough. I called the police, but I didn't tell Karen. The next morning, detectives met us. We showed them the forged documents, the altered medication, the financial withdrawals, the insurance policy, the property loan. The detective looked at me. This is serious. I know. We need evidence connecting your wife directly. We have it. I handed him a small flash drive. He looked at me. What is this? Something I recorded last night. I had called Karen. I told her I was done fighting. I told her my mother would sign the property documents. I told her I wanted the family to stay together. Karen believed me. And she talked for 27 minutes. She admitted she had access to my mother's bank card. She admitted Michael had prepared the property documents. She admitted she knew the medication had been switched. But she said she hadn't intended to hurt my mother. She said it was supposed to make her weak enough to agree to assisted living. Then came the sentence that changed the entire case. Karen said, once she signs the house over, everything becomes easier. The detective listened twice. Then he said, we can work with this. But I wasn't finished. There was one person missing. Michael. He was the one who created the company. The fake loan, the property transfer, and possibly the insurance policy. The detectives arranged a controlled meeting. I called Michael. He answered. Daniel, I know everything. He went silent. I want to meet. Where? My mother's house. No. Why? I don't think that's a good idea. Then explain why you used her house as collateral. Silence. I said, you have one chance. He finally agreed. 2 hours later, Michael arrived. He didn't come alone. Karen was with him. I was sitting at the dining table. 2 hidden cameras were recording. The detectives were outside. Michael walked in. He looked at me. You made a mistake. What mistake? You involved the police. I haven't. He smiled. Good. Karen sat down. Michael opened a folder. Your mother can sign the transfer tonight. No. Karen looked at me. Daniel. I shook my head. You're not taking her house. Michael leaned forward. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're protecting someone who can't take care of herself. My mother can take care of herself. She can't even open a pill bottle. The room went silent. I looked at Karen. She looked away. I said, You knew. Michael frowned. Knew what? That she would collapse. Karen stood. Daniel, stop. I looked at her. You switched the medication. I didn't. You told me you knew she wasn't taking it correctly. That doesn't mean. Michael interrupted. Enough. He suddenly realized what he had said. I watched him. Why did you say that? He didn't answer. Why did you say enough? He stood. We're leaving. I smiled. You should stay. Why? Because the police are already outside. His face changed. Karen began crying. Michael looked toward the door. 2 detectives entered. Michael Grant? He froze. "You're under arrest." Karen stared at me. "Daniel." I didn't answer. The detective turned toward her. "Karen Brooks, you're also under arrest." She started shaking. "You can't do this." The detective read her the charges. Fraud, forgery, financial exploitation of an elderly person, insurance fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction. Karen looked at me. "How could you do this to me?" I stood. "How could you do this to my mother?" She cried. I was trying to help. "No." I shook my head. "You were trying to own her." They took them outside. My mother was watching from the hallway. She had insisted on coming. I walked toward her. She looked at me. "Is it over?" I hugged her. "Yes, Mom." She cried against my shoulder. "I never wanted this." "I know. I just wanted peace." "I know." She pulled away. "What happens now?" I looked toward the police cars outside. "Now we make sure nobody ever does this to you again." The investigation lasted almost a year. The forensic accountants found more than we expected. Michael had been using elderly people's properties as collateral for fraudulent loans. Karen had helped him identify vulnerable family members. There were 7 other victims. 7 families. 7 people who had trusted someone. And my mother's case had almost become another hidden statistic. The insurance policy was canceled. The fraudulent loan was voided. The forged power of attorney was officially declared invalid. My mother's house remained hers. And Karen eventually admitted her involvement. She received a prison sentence. Michael received an even longer sentence. But the punishment wasn't the part that mattered most to me. It was what happened afterward. My mother moved into a smaller house closer to me. We renovated it. We installed handrails, a better bathroom, a medical alert system, and a kitchen counter at the perfect height for her walker. Every Sunday, I cooked dinner. She complained about my cooking. I complained about her complaints. And somehow, that became our favorite tradition. One evening, months after the trial, she asked me something. "Do you regret it?" I knew what she meant. "Leaving Karen?" She nodded. I thought about it. Then I answered honestly. "I regret that I didn't see the truth sooner." My mother looked at me. "Don't regret that." "Why?" "Because you saw it when it mattered." I smiled. She reached across the table and held my hand. "You saved me." I shook my head. "No, Mom." "What?" "You saved yourself." She laughed. I couldn't even open a medicine bottle. I laughed too. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes strength isn't being able to do everything yourself." She squeezed my hand. "Sometimes strength is knowing when to ask the right person for help." I thought about Karen's words. "Figure it out yourself." And I realized how wrong they had been. My mother had spent 82 years figuring things out herself. She had raised children, buried her husband, paid bills, survived illnesses, held our family together. She wasn't weak because she needed help opening a bottle. She was human. And needing help doesn't make someone a burden. It makes them human. A year after Karen's arrest, I returned to my mother's old house. It was empty. The new owners had bought it from us after my mother decided she didn't want to live there anymore. I stood in the doorway for a long time. I remembered my father sitting at the kitchen table, my mother cooking dinner, me running through the hallway as a child. Everything had changed. But one thing remained. On the kitchen wall, beneath several layers of paint, was a small mark my father had made decades earlier. A line measuring my height. Beside it was my name. Daniel, age 12. I touched it, and I smiled. My father had spent his life teaching me that a man's responsibility wasn't simply to provide. It was to protect the people who trusted him. I hadn't understood that until my mother's trust had nearly been destroyed. When I left the house, I called her. Mom? Yes? I'm coming over. She laughed. You just left. I know. Why are you coming back? I forgot something. What? I smiled. I forgot to ask if you need anything. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Actually, what? I could use some help opening a jar. I laughed. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Take your time. No? I started the car. I won't. Because I had learned something. There will always be people who tell the elderly to figure it out themselves. There will always be people who see vulnerability as an opportunity. There will always be people who look at someone's age and mistake it for weakness. But age isn't weakness. Trust isn't weakness. Kindness isn't weakness. And helping someone who once helped you doesn't make you foolish. It makes you family. I never spoke to Karen after the sentencing. People ask me whether I hated her. The truth is, I don't. Hate requires energy, and I had none left for her. I was too busy living the life she had almost taken from my mother. My mother lived another 3 years. 3 beautiful years. She turned 83. Then 84. Then 85. She complained about the food at restaurants. She argued with doctors. She cheated at card games. She stole cookies from my kitchen. And every time she asked for help, I helped. Sometimes it was opening a bottle. Sometimes it was carrying groceries. Sometimes it was simply sitting beside her. One winter morning, she called me. Daniel? Yes? Come over. Are you okay? Yes. What's wrong? I want coffee. I laughed. You have coffee. I don't like mine. Why? Because you made it. I laughed. I'll be there. When I arrived, she was sitting by the window. She looked peaceful. Too peaceful. I knew immediately. You said busy here. Mom? She looked at me. I've had a good life. I shook my head. Don't talk like that. She smiled. You always hated when I was right. I held her hand. She looked at me. You did the right thing. What? When you chose to believe me. I couldn't speak. She squeezed my hand. That's all a mother ever wants. She closed her eyes. I stayed beside her. And for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. Because she wasn't alone. She had me, and I had her until the very end. After the funeral, I returned home. I found the old medication bottle and a box of her belongings. The bottle that had started everything. I held it in my hand. It was just plastic. Small. Ordinary. Something most people would throw away without thinking. But to me, it represented the moment I stopped ignoring the signs. The moment I stopped explaining away behavior that didn't make sense. The moment I realized that sometimes the person standing closest to you can be the person you need to question most. I placed the bottle in a drawer. I didn't keep it because I wanted revenge. I kept it because I never wanted to forget. My mother had once needed help opening that bottle, and my wife had told her to figure it out herself. The next day, my mother collapsed. At first, I thought those events were connected by coincidence. They weren't. They were connected by a plan. A plan built around money, greed, forgery, manipulation, and the belief that an 82-year-old woman was too weak to fight back. They were wrong. She wasn't weak. She had me, and more importantly, she had the truth. The truth doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives as a bank statement, a strange signature, a medication bottle, a missing document, a sentence that doesn't make sense, a look someone gives you when they think you aren't watching. You have to notice. You have to ask. And sometimes you have to be willing to believe what you don't want to believe. Because the hardest truth isn't discovering that a stranger betrayed you. It's discovering that someone you trusted for decades was capable of it. I spent 38 years believing Karen was my wife. But the woman I thought I knew disappeared long before the police arrived. Maybe she disappeared the first time she looked at my mother and saw an asset instead of a person. Maybe she disappeared the first time she opened my mother's bank statements. Maybe she disappeared the first time she signed a document that wasn't hers to sign. Or maybe she had always been that person, and I simply hadn't wanted to see it. That's the part I still struggle with. Not the prison sentence. Not the court hearings. Not the money. Not even the betrayal. It's the question of how long you can live beside someone without really seeing them. My mother taught me the answer. You don't need to spend your life regretting what you failed to notice. You need to pay attention when the truth finally shows itself. And when it does, you need the courage to act. Because sometimes one sentence can reveal an entire person. For my wife, it was, figure it out yourself. For my mother, it became the beginning of the end. For me, it became the beginning of the truth. And the following day, when my 82-year-old mother collapsed, I finally understood what my instincts had been trying to tell me. She hadn't needed someone to figure it out herself. She had needed someone to care. And I was going to make sure she never had to ask twice. Because family isn't measured by who shares your last name. It isn't measured by who sits at your dinner table. It isn't measured by who promises to love you. Family is measured by what someone does when you're vulnerable. When you're afraid. When you're old. When you can't open a bottle yourself, when you need someone to hold your hand, that's when you find out who really belongs beside you. And I learned that lesson from an 82-year-old woman who spent her final years teaching me something I should have understood much earlier. Never be ashamed to ask for help. Never mistake kindness for weakness. And never ignore the moment when someone tells you exactly who they are. Because sometimes you only get one warning. And sometimes that warning comes from the person you trusted most. My wife told my mother to figure it out herself. My mother did. She figured out who she could trust. And in the end, so did I.